What is going on with Jaguar? Honestly, the internet has gone mental over Jaguar's two recent, I would say announcements, but let's say shenanigans. First of all, to announce that they're going for a sabbatical, so they're not going to be selling any new cars for at least a year. So they'll probably come back in 2026, it looks like. And secondly, and that's with EVs only. And secondly, the rebranding that they've just been doing. There's a lot of craziness that is going on in the industry at the moment, and part of that is indicative of the fact that there's a lot of external pressures on an industry that used to be pretty much self-contained, self-composed, self-reliant, and had a pretty good idea of what it was doing and where it was going and what was going to come in the future and how it was going to tackle those changes. Unfortunately, because the future has now become so uncertain, it's all gone a bit crazy. And because of this, there are a lot of brands, not just Jaguar, but quite a few brands that actually, I wouldn't quite say have gone off the rails, but have maybe lost direction a little bit. And let's get into not just what Jaguar is doing and doing wrong, but what other car companies are also having to do wrong. And we'll do that right after this.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
Right, so before we get into any of this, I want to talk about my own relationship with these brands. In Jaguar, for example, I have to say that I think, because a lot of people ask me, like, where did your interest in cars come from? And I really can't define it, because my dad didn't drive until he really had to, until he moved to Saudi Arabia and he realized he had no choice. And nobody in my family is interested in cars. Nobody in my immediate sphere was interested in cars. Still aren't, pretty much, and probably won't be. But I was always passionate, and I've often tried to figure out, like, where does that come from? And I think that, to an extent, for me, it's probably come from watching TV and films and stuff like that, and just being absolutely fascinated and falling in love with these things. And one of my very earliest memories is actually this thing here. And this is a scene from an action show that used to be on here called The New Avengers. Nothing to do with the Marvel Universe. It was called The New Avengers, and it was kind of like an action, almost like a sci-fi show at some points as well. But it was a lot of fun. And of course, back in the day, cool characters had to have cool cars. And the coolest of these characters was John Steed, and he had a cool car. He had this broad speed Jaguar one-off. It was made just for the show. Jaguar XJC. I think it was meant to be a V12. I don't know if it was actually a V12, but it was meant to be a V12. And this thing was bonkers. And it's this particular scene that I remember, that as he turns up at a racing track and he wants to ask some questions of this guy that's out on the track in a single-seater, setting the lap record. And he says, well, what? I'll just go and chase him down. And I just pull him over and say, I've got to ask you some questions, my dear chap, in this incredible car. And I was just smitten with this. And I still, even today, think it's an absolute beast. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I think that, for a lot of people, their earliest memories are of the Jaguar brand XK, XK120, Jaguar E-Type, etc., etc. But for me, this was and is and will remain the boss when it comes to Jaguar. And there's a couple of other brands I want to talk about as well, and how I fell in love with them. I mean, Honda is another one of my favorite brands. And, I say favorite brands, but, as a car journalist, I'm not really supposed to have favorite brands. I love all cars, I love all brands, and I'm interested in all of them. But, as a car guy, you can't help but have an affinity to some of these brands. And Jaguar, definitely because of that early story, I've always had an affection for. Similarly with Honda. When my dad got a car when we moved to Saudi Arabia, I made him buy a Honda. And to me, Honda's innovation and what they were doing at the time, and the fact that Satoru Honda was such a character who wanted to take the brand racing, and they did well in Formula One in the 60s. And there was something about the cars that anytime you drove a Honda, there was always a sport, even a bland one, even an ordinary one, there was something sporty about it. There was something about the gear change and the way it would respond and the way it would steer that just made it stand out a little bit, made it special. And so I've always loved them. Ford, the first car that I ever bought with my own money was a Ford. It was a Ford Cortina, but that wasn't really the reason that I got Ford on there. It's that if you were in places like, so for example, if you're in the UK, you're either a Ford guy or a Vauxhall guy. Just like, in America, you're a Chevy guy or a Ford guy. Similarly in Australia, you were a Ford guy or a Holden guy. And I guess in the UK, I probably erred more towards the Ford camp. And again, because I always felt that Ford put a little bit of extra into their car, just in terms of the driving enjoyment, just to really sort of tweak it a little bit so that it'd be satisfying to drive, you know. And again, similarly to that Ford GM kind of thing that you would have, you would also have whether you were a BMW guy or a Mercedes guy. And I know a lot of my community are Mercedes people, because Mercedes, you know, when you made it, you get yourself a Mercedes. But to me, I was always a BMW guy. And as people will know, I have an E30, but I had an E30 back in the day as well. And to me, there was always something a little bit exciting, and something a little bit sharp, a little bit sort of, you know, exciting and sporty and, you know, slightly more engaging about a BMW. So I was always in the BMW camp. And then of course Lotus, you know, like my all-time favorite, best car ever is the Lotus Esprit, because Lotus to me was a company that was, you know, punching above its weight, you know, that was creating a supercar. This was a four-cylinder supercar that was, you know, shoulder to shoulder with a Lamborghini Countach, you know, at the time, you know, in terms of its drama, its poise, its style, and of course it was the better car to actually drive and its handling and stuff. It was actually the better car. So these cars, these brands for me hold a lot of affection. And I think a lot of these brands, apart from, I will say one of them, I'm quite worried about. Let's start with Ford, for example. So Ford, they have recently, and I've done a separate video on this actually about Ford. They've recently said that we know that they've abandoned their mass market cars. So the Fiesta used to be the best selling car in the UK for endless years. And then now they've discontinued it. Focus is being discontinued. Basically all the saloons, they're focusing only on the SUVs. And even there, you know, recently what they've been saying is that, you know, we're actually going to go high end because, frankly, they're throwing in the towel. This is the company. Don't forget, this is the company that gave us the Ford Model T. This is the company that brought motoring to the masses. Literally, invented production processes when it came to cars. This is the company that did that, and this is the company that's saying, oh yeah, we're pulling back from you know, mass production, from mass sales, and we're going to focus on high-end stuff. And basically, why are they doing that? They're doing that because they can see what's happening with China. They can see that they can't really compete with that, neither on scale nor on price and volume. So they're going, well, you know what? Then let's double down on the things that we know we're good at, which China can't replicate. So they're going, well, we're just going to do high-end exclusive cars. Now, you could get really upset at Ford, and a lot of people are getting upset at Ford because they came out, they did their own recent faux pas, which is coming out with an electric SUV and calling it the Capri, whilst not actually giving us a real Capri. And the Capri fans have just hated that. And I think that the latest figures are that they've had to cut back production on that car because it's going to achieve nothing like the sales that we're hoping for. They thought, let's stick a Capri badge on it because there's a lot of love for the Capri badge. There is a lot of love for the Capri badge, but not on that car. I think if people wanted to see a new Capri, even if it was electric, it should have been, you know, a coupe, a sports car, you know, something like that, something that sort of, you know, reminded us more of the original Capri. And you can say that there's a Mustang Mach-E. I've spoken about this before, but the Mach-E, the Mustang Mach-E exists because and is accepted because there's still a Mustang available. Which brings me to the fact that despite what Ford is doing, and despite the fact that it's very easy to get upset and angry about what Ford is doing, I will still forgive Ford, and I will forgive Ford because Ford have stated that as long as we're allowed to do so, we're going to continue to build a Mustang V8 petrol. We will continue, and in manual as well, they'll continue to do it. They've said we will do it. And of course, they still make cool cars. In addition to the Mustang, you got the Bronco, which is achingly cool. And then you got things like the Ranger Raptor, you got the F-150 Raptor. So they're still offering product, which you go, okay, you know what? That's car guy product. You know, so you go, okay, well, you know what? I'll forgive them, and I'll forgive them for retrenching and trying to survive, because we want companies like that to survive. We want companies that will give us that enticing, exciting product. So If that's what they need to do to survive, then maybe we have to accept that. Similarly with Honda, you know, like I said, back in the day, I mean, even, you know, 80s, I remember, you know, going to, every time, 80s, 90s, every time I'd go to a Honda showroom, there would be cars in the showroom that I'd be like, oh, I want that, oh, that's pretty cool, that I desire, you know. They did crazy stuff, Accord Coupe, Accord Type R, you know, the shuttle, they were experimenting, they were pushing the boundaries, and they were doing some really wild stuff. Four-wheel steering, they're the first people to actually offer four-wheel steering, it was a mechanical form of four-wheel steering on the Honda Prelude. But when you go into a Honda showroom now, honestly, there's nothing there that gets you fizzing. I mean, you know, there's a couple of products. So, for example, there's a Civic Type R. The problem with the Civic Type R, although it is a brilliant product, but the new generation, the price jump is just ridiculous, you know, because the previous Civic Type R, which is still a great car, and which was actually manufactured here, and which you do see on the roads, was about £33,000. And then they replaced that with the next one, and that didn't go 36, 37, 38, 40, no, it went to £50,000. I mean, that's just bonkers. And understandably, I've not seen a single one on the road at all. I don't know if anybody's bought one, but I haven't seen one on the road at all. But again, I will forgive Honda, because there is a sense in Honda that they're kind of coming back to it. And they every now and then they do put out something that's quite funky, like the Honda E. I mean, the Honda E hasn't done well because the EV range is very low on the car, but the car itself is utterly brilliant. It's adorable, it's clever, it's got brilliant features inside. It's brilliant. If they put a little plug-in hybrid engine into that, that would have done really, really well. And then, of course, they've announced that they're bringing the Prelude back. So you know what? I'm going to give Honda a pass as well. Hey, are you enjoying this video? Then make sure you hit the like button. It's very important. Plus, comment, share, and make sure you're subscribed. So BMW I'm not going to touch, because BMW, I think, we'll come back to BMW, but I think BMW are running a very clever strategy where they're making parallel cars, EV and still ICE, but they're still giving us those internal combustion engine cars. And they're still, you know, when they put out the launch of the BMW M2 a year or two ago, and then the promo video was literally the car just going sideways, and you go, yeah, there's still cool guys at BMW that know what they're about and know what they're doing. So yeah, that makes sense. So Lotus, God, like I said, I adore that brand, you know, ever since, you know, I watched the Bond movie with the White Lotus Esprit diving off the pier and Roger Moore turning into his companion and saying, "Can you swim?" Before smirking and turning the whole thing into a submarine. There was just nothing like that on the planet. I've always loved it. And then more recently, you know, when I was in Dubai, I had the privilege of reviewing the Exige, the Elise, the Evora, and every single one of those cars was just utterly, utterly brilliant to drive. Absolutely, like nothing else. This side of a Caterham, nothing can touch those cars. You know, they're just fantastic. But of course, a couple of years ago, they killed off their entire range as well. And they said, well, we're going electric as well. And now, most recently, when I went down, I put another video up, when I went down to look at the Theory 1 concept that was in the Piccadilly showroom. And I mean, the technology behind it is extraordinary, but I didn't really get my juices flowing. It's just like, it was just a fascinating and, you know, interesting thing to look at and to try and understand. But it wasn't something I went, oh man, oh, I want one of those. No. And also in the showroom, there was, and I can't even remember the names, but there was a saloon, the new EV saloon that they're doing. It was huge. And then of course they do the Electra, which is the SUV. Again, huge. And when you think back to the Lotus philosophy, what was it? Reduce weight and add lightness. Now it's increase weight and add heaviness. That's what seems to be going on with Lotus. And it's like so completely opposite to what Lotus used to be about. And that's something I'm struggling to get on board with. Now, I know they have to reinvent themselves. I know they have to create cars that people want, and they have to look forward. And it's inevitable that manufacturers have to look at EVs. That all makes perfect sense. But those cars, they just don't say Lotus to me. You know, if Lotus came out with an SUV, I wanted to see something that was really off the charts, different, unique, a completely new and unusual and clever approach, because that's what Lotus is about. It's about clever solutions to problems, you know. They came up with a lot, you know, active suspension, sound cancellation. These are all things that Lotus created behind the scenes that, you know, they did for other manufacturers. And they've sorted out so many other cars and things. I owned a Celica Supra 1984. That was the one with the wider wheel arches. That's because when Toyota originally launched the Supra, there were problems with the handling. But funnily enough, usefully enough, Toyota owned Lotus at the time, and they said, hey, can you sort this out? And they did. They improved it so much more. So they do a lot of work for other manufacturers. So they're a great brand. So in that sense, again, despite the fact that I think that Lotus is going wrong, and I think that what they're doing is wrong, I will still forgive them because they fall back on their heritage quite a lot. So at the same time as they had the Theory 1 concept in the showroom in Piccadilly that I went to see, they clearly said it's inspired by the original Esprit and an S1 Esprit pride of place in the front. As soon as you went in the door, there it was, and that was them going, we're proud of this, and I love them for that. And it was great to see that car. I was just drooling all over that car. And also, they still have things like the Emira, right? So I'll give them a pass as well. So then that, of course, then brings us back to Jaguar. And Jaguar, it's far more difficult because I don't know if you've seen these assets. I put them up on the Facebook page. But in addition to Jaguar saying that we're going to take a sabbatical, we'll stop selling any cars, and we're going to develop a range of EVs, and then we'll come back in a year or two, then they've also, at the same time, for no real reason. I mean, if you're taking a sabbatical, then just go away quietly. No, for some reason, they've gone, all right, and by the way, we're completely reimagining the brand, and this is what it is now. And this, to a lot of people have said, the assets and the advert that they put out, it didn't remind you of cars, and certainly not of Jaguar cars in any sense whatsoever. It looked like a perfume or a fashion brand advertising, something like that. The logo looks like it's a logo for a toy company, and then the roundel that they've created, which doesn't necessarily make any sense. It looks like it's like a Gucci design or something like that. That should be on a designer handbag. That's what it looks like, and that's for the good old Leaper. The one so proud and prominent motif of Jaguar that was recognizable around the world. I mean, now it's kind of embedded and hidden in this kind of silhouette. It's almost like they're embarrassed by it, and which is, it's a real shame. So, like I said, this sabbatical that they're doing, so they've already announced that they're taking time off sale. I think the production of all their cars is going to stop next year. So I think they're still feeding into some external markets, I'm guessing. But in the UK, they've stopped sales. They're cutting back on their dealers as well. And then probably in 2026. And because they're going to go full EV. So there's one aspect of the EV side of it, which, hate them or love them, but it's inevitable, and that makes sense. You do need to have EVs in your model range. It's inevitable because it's stipulated by. I'll come back to this. It's stipulated by policymakers. It's a requirement. It's the way things are going. So you have to do it. But it doesn't mean you have to exclusively do it, but it means you do have to do it. And of course, when they say they're going away and coming back in 2026 or 2027, then they're getting closer and closer to the 2030, 2035 deadlines for completely removing new cars, petrol and diesel new cars on sale. But the trouble with the other part of what they've said is that when they do come back, they're going to be a much higher end brand. So they're going to be a more luxurious, more prestigious, more premium brand. So they're looking at competing with the likes of Porsche and Bentley and stuff like that, which means that even today, if you're a Jaguar fan, or not today, but yesterday, shall we say, if you're a Jaguar fan and you wanted to get into the brand, you went, okay, well, I could get an XE, or I could get, although they discontinued the XE a while ago, I could get an E-Pace, cuddly little E-Pace, and get into the brand, because they were sort of, I won't say affordable, but maybe more accessible, But when they come back next time, it looks like they're going to have cars in the £150,000 plus range. That's sort of where we're going to look at. 100,000 at least plus. That's where we're going to be. Which again makes it very, very difficult for them to come back from nowhere and then to launch these cars and expect people to buy them. And it's almost like, we'll come back to this, but I think it's almost like they're going away and they ain't going to be coming back. I think there is a very real danger of that. And they've called this thing a fire break. Odd choice of words, really, honestly, considering the circumstances. But they've called it a fire break. Well, we're taking a clean break, clean sheet, and we're going to come back with a whole new set of cars. They're going to be introducing a concept, I think, GT, and then saloon, and then an SUV. But there are other manufacturers, in fact, that they want to go after, which have shown that it's not necessary to do it this way. If you look at Porsche, look at Mercedes, look at BMW. All three of these brands have successfully introduced EV models alongside their existing models. In fact, a recent Mercedes ad that's running on TV, I've seen it a few times, and it looks like there's the same woman, or maybe she's a triplet or whatever. They're all getting into Mercedes SUVs, but they're all getting into different ones. So one person is getting into an EV, one person is getting into a hybrid, and one person is getting into a pure petrol one. So, and then they all line up alongside and they drive off and they're all smiling. And there's a very clear message there from Mercedes, which is saying that yes, we're doing the EV thing, but we've still got the petrol thing. And and basically what we're doing is we're giving you a choice. You get the Mercedes badge, the Mercedes prestige, the Mercedes quality, but we're giving you a choice, which is how it should be. That's exactly how it should be. Consumers should have a choice. They should be able to choose whether they want to go this electric, hybrid, diesel, petrol, hydrogen, whatever. They should have a choice. And this is what manufacturers should be offering. And I think this is what manufacturers actually want to offer. Because if you think about it, BMW, as I've mentioned before, is doing the same thing. It's offering a parallel set of vehicles. So you've got the continuing with their internal combustion engine range. Still got 3 Series, 4 Series, 5 Series, 7. You still got them. But you've got the i4, the i5, so the I range is alongside that one. And at the same time, it was taking time to infuse those I range of BMWs with BMW qualities. I mean, the i4 M50 electric BMW still today remains one of my favorite EVs that I've driven, because it felt like a BMW. It had an artificial sound, but it sounded like a BMW, it handled like a BMW, and it was quick. And it was enjoyable. So, it can be done. And you can sell them side by side and you can give people a choice. Same with Porsche. Porsche offers you a Taycan, which is an EV. And they're offering you EV Macans and stuff like that. But at the same time, you can buy a Panamera. You can buy a Cayenne, which have got powerful V6 engines in them. And of course, you can buy the 911. And what they're saying is, and they will continue to offer the 911. No, but Jaguar has decided they're doing a clean sheet reset. They're doing a fire break, as they called it. And when they say clean sheet, I mean if you go to their Instagram, I was shocked about this. You go to their Instagram, you go to the Facebook, you go to the Twitter, they've actually deleted all of their previous posts. They've wiped it out. They've completely, it's like they've erased their past. They've denied their heritage. They've forgotten their glory days. This is the car that has so much adoration, or car brand that has so much adoration and adulation, and they've almost dismissed all of that. Even to the point of the E-Type, are you going to forget that icon? This is a car no less than Enzo Ferrari, is the founder of Ferrari. He's reported to have been at a motor show when he saw the Jaguar E-Type, and he's reported to have said, that is the most beautiful car in the world. Enzo Ferrari. And are they just dismissing all of this? The move to EVs is not wrong. Like I said, I must emphasize this. I'm not against that. But I don't see why you're having to have this clean break to do that. Because you could have had these brands side by side as top brands such as Porsche, Mercedes, BMW are doing. But also, you could have evolved that EV segment. In fact, to be honest, arguably, Jaguar was kind of ahead of the game because they introduced the I-Pace, some years before some of these other brands introduced an EV, and to some limited success as well, although the reliability is questionable. But anyway, the point is that they could have just kept on building on that. The I-Pace has just been the same for years. They haven't done anything to it, and it's like they could have kept building on that and evolving that, and then growing the EV offering through that initial car. Which look at what Nissan has done. They had the Leaf, now they got the Aria. You can see that there's been a transition to get better and better and to build on the success of their electric car. But Jaguar decided no, they're just going to get rid of everything, and they still built some great petrol cars. The F-Pace SVR I reviewed a few years ago. What a beast of a thing. One of my favorite SUVs. But no, they're going to have a clean break. They're going to come back electric. They're going to throw all their eggs into that basket just at the point in time when the rest of the industry is going, yeah, we're not so sure about this EV thing. And many of them are backtracking from the commitments. The problem is that they're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because on the one side they've got governments and policymakers telling them make EVs and sell EVs, and on the other hand they've got consumers saying we don't want them. In fact, news out yesterday In the UK, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have the target for 2030, 2035, but we have the ZEV mandate, which stipulates a certain percentage of cars sold in the UK must be EVs. And this year, for example, this is the first year that we had that, and the stipulation was 22%. Car makers in the UK are concerned that they're going to miss that target. In fact, they are missing that target. And what that means is they're going to get fined, heavy, heavy fines. The fines are, I think, up to 15,000 per car that is not an EV that they sell. So it's almost like they don't want to sell any cars because they're going to be incurring fines on them. But they actually gotten together. Despite the fact that electric vehicle sales did reach 300,000 in the first 10 months of 2024 of this year, that's only 18.1% of the market. It is an increase, so the EV sector is growing, for sure it's growing here and globally, but it's not enough of increase because it needs to be 22%, not 18.1%, and it's well short of what they expect next year, which is 28%. And of course, we've already seen the reaction to this. Nissan has told the government that trying to meet these EV targets could result in a potentially irreversible impact on the UK automotive sector. Well, we're already seeing that because yesterday Ford also announced that they were cutting in 4,000 jobs in their businesses, including hundreds of jobs. I think it's about 800 something jobs in the UK as well. And as we've discussed, because they're retrenching and they're deciding that they're not going to compete with the Chinese head on, and they're going to focus on other things. And so what we're going to see, in fact, Japanese firm was one of a number of car makers that has taken part in an industry-wide meeting with cabinet members and other officials to talk to them about this enforced transition to EVs and what it's going to do to them as an industry. Don't forget, I mean, I'm not going to go into it right now, but I think it's 70-something billion that the industry is worth to the UK economy. So this is big we're talking about. And anyway, but on the basis of that, what's happening, you can see a company taking a break, like Jaguar is taking a break because they're saying, well, we don't want to have any, we don't have enough EVs and we don't want to get any fines, so we're just going to stop selling anything until we've got some cars. So you can kind of understand that's kind of what they're thinking, and you can see other manufacturers maybe also doing that in future. But then taking the break was one thing. That's bad enough. That is one thing. But then, there's this. And the reaction to this advert that they put out, this rebranding advert, this film that kind of shows their so-called new aesthetic, it's akin to absolute outrage on the internet. People are just horrified. They're sad and they're seething. And the sad word is very interesting because sad, you can get angry about things, you can rant about things, but when you get sad, when people have literally said, and even yesterday I was doing a live and I was just chatting and somebody said, I'm very sad about it. Sad denotes or connotates something entirely different. It means that you're sad because it's like a loss. It's like you're feeling a loss. It's like that's something that you've loved, you've adored, you've been loyal to, and now you're feeling a loss that it's going or it's gone. And I think that's where it's a problem. Traditional, if Jaguar was hoping to get a reaction out of what they're doing, then they got it. But the question is, why were they doing it? Like I said, they have nothing to show at the moment. They're taking a break. They didn't need to do this right now. There was no reason to do it, but, because they could have just gone quietly away and then come back with a bang and gone, look at this is what we're doing. Or introduce their concepts and started to build up excitement. But, this is not going to put anybody in mind to even look forward to seeing the concept car. The amount of hate and anger and sadness that's out there is not endearing people to the brand anymore. So I don't understand what they were doing. If they were trying to provoke a reaction, they got it. But was that really a reaction that you should have provoked? Traditional Jaguar fans are repulsed, and everybody else is either confused or aghast about it, By contrast, I remember this ad. This was from 2015. And it was just so cool. Do you remember this ad? Just 30 seconds into this advert, honestly, if you're watching it, 30 seconds in, you wanted a Jaguar F-Type. You just wanted an F-Type which is a great car, by the way. I love them. But this advert was built on the brand's Britishness, its inherent self-confidence, its elegance, and that it was a bit naughty, a bit villainous, really. It was clever because the way that they did this advert, like I said, very clever because it wasn't jingoistic in any way, and yet it made you feel proud to be British. And that was the thing. It sort of captured the essence of it, and that line stuck in your head at the end when Ben Kingsley says,
"Oh yes, it's good to be bad."
Oh yes, it's good to be bad. I mean, it was just awesome. It absolutely rocked. And that's how you do these things. That's how you get people interested, engaged, excited, and loyal to the brand, you know? And, you know, at that point, you saw this ad and you went, like, I don't care if the car's unreliable, I want one. It was just like, that's the reaction that you get. So, can they recover from this? Can they pull things back? At the moment, doesn't look like. Honestly, the reaction of the internet right now is absolute, you know, sadness, disappointment, disillusionment, and hate, abject hate. But anything is possible. Anything is possible. It's marketing, it's PR, it's the internet. You know, things change overnight. Anything is possible. And especially considering that they're going to be going away anyway, so if they disappear for a bit and come back, then maybe they could be successful. And also, don't forget, here's the other aspect of taking this break, because the EV technology is still in early stages, and this is one of the problems that we have with it, is that it's still being developed, it's still being worked on, it's not quite there yet. And by taking a break of a year or two, that could be themselves giving them just that time to come back when things are actually better. Because obviously battery chemistries are changing, the way they make them, the way they build them, the materials they use are changing. Solid state batteries are expected by the end of next year, and they're going to be a game changer. So it could well be that by the time Jaguar comes back, the whole EV technology is matured, and actually we're like, yeah, we're looking forward to it. So maybe it could be a good move, just in terms of the cars. But with this happening, you know, the point is that will anybody care? Will anybody remember them by taking the break? Will anybody want them to come back after you've put everybody off by doing stuff like that? And also then, will anybody be able to afford them because they've gone up market? And again, if the sort of clientele that's buying cars in that price bracket, and if they're already buying top-end Mercedes, BMWs, Porsche, then are they really going to go, oh, you know what? Oh, fancy buying this brand that disappeared, you know, without explanation a couple of years ago, did something weird, and now it's come back with this. It's going to be a hard sell, I reckon, you know. And here's the thing. You can understand that manufacturers are suffering right now because, like I said, because they're stuck between the policymakers and what consumers want, but also the Chinese onslaught, because the Chinese are taking the industry to town right now. And legacy brands are losing out in terms of volume and sales and pricing. Legacy brands are really, really struggling. Now, what the clever legacy brands are doing is that they're realizing that they have one thing that the Chinese brands don't have: legacy, heritage, history, the past. And you can see this happening. Even Renault, which has just introduced 2 electric cars, or one already and one that's coming, Renault 5 and then the Renault 4. But what's it doing? It's harking back to these older models that were so beloved and that people still have nostalgic memories of, and the shape is there. And you see what they're doing. There's a lot of retro stuff going on, and then people are building on that. The Mini is a retro car, but it's electric, you know, and of course the companies themselves, even if it's not electric, they continuing to fall back on their heritage and to remind people of what they are and who they are, and that's how they're going to maintain loyalty from their buyers and their consumers and get new people interested. Ford, like I said, they have promised that they're going to continue to build the Mustang. Porsche will never ever kill the 911, you know that. Aston Martin will never let go of that James Bond connection. It will keep reminding you that it's inseparable from 007, you know, and that's going to continue. And remember, this is the thing that the Chinese car brands don't have. They don't have these past glories. They don't have these histories. They don't have those iconic cars. And so this is where car companies are going, well, let's build on that, because that's the one thing they don't have. And this is the one thing that Jaguar has erased, which to my mind is astonishing. It's like, well, all the manufacturers, all the legacy brands are realizing we need to fall back on our heritage, and Jaguar, which has got glorious, fantastic, wonderful heritage, is going, yeah, we're going to delete all of that and start again. Wow. You know, what they should be doing is go right back to the beginning of the video, and I talked about the car that I fell in love with. They should be putting out a retro plug-in hybrid version of that broad-speed Jaguar XJC. And there's a hint of something like that in my book, the ULEZ Files. Make sure you check that out. But I don't think Jaguar will do that. And honestly, I'm genuinely worried and concerned that I don't think they're actually going to come back from this. I don't think that the brand will, A, survive this thing that they've done with this rebranding, and B, survive this gap, and then expect to come back with really expensive high-end EVs that people will be like, what, why, who, where? You know, and then you know, in this transition that's happening in the global automotive industry, we know that certain brands, some brands, not certain brands, but some brands will die. They will fall victim to it, and I think that maybe Jaguar is going to be one of those. You know, the world has gone mad, and that includes the car industry. It's just stuff that's going on that doesn't actually make sense anymore, and it's hard to understand where things are going. So I want to leave you with this quote that I found, which I thought was particularly apt, because maybe this quote gives an insight into the fact that there is a level of understanding, perception, and foresight that's going on with people like Jaguar that maybe the rest of us simply aren't comprehending right now, because it's just hard to comprehend what's going on in the world. So I'll leave you with this quote from George Bernard Shaw, and the quote is, "When the world goes mad, one must accept madness as sanity, since sanity is, in the last analysis, nothing but the madness on which the whole world happens to agree." Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Hi guys, I've been writing. This is my first book, a novel, an all-out action thriller, and this one is a collection of 13 stories I've written over the course of 2 decades. The Ulysses Files and The Quantum Races by BC Guy are out now on Amazon.com. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.